Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the seminar series 08 of the Faculty of Public Health, Universitas Indonesia. In May 2023, the World Meteorological Organization said there is a 98% chance that at least one of the next 5 years, and the 5-year period as a whole, will be the hottest on record. According to recent research from scientists at the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change (IPCC), average temperatures are already 1.1 degrees Celsius higher than 1850 to 1900 levels. The rate of temperature rise in the last half-century is the highest in 2,000 years, said United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. El Niño and La Niña have different effects in some areas. As a result, Indonesia south of the equator was hit by drought. Rotendao and East Sumba, NTT, also broke the record for the longest rainless days, which is 176 days per October. Climatology researcher at the Center for Climate and Atmosphere of the National Research and Innovation Agency Brin Irma Yuli Haston explained, the temperature condition in Semarang was reported to reach 38 degrees Celsius. This is the effect of climate change. BMKG reports Indonesia's normal monthly average temperature from 1991 to 2020 and Indonesia's monthly average temperature until September 2023. The estimated loss of the health sector due to the impact of climate change throughout 2021 to 2050 is estimated to reach 86% or 21.6 billion United States dollars of national GDP. Priority groups of diseases due to the negative impacts of climate change, consisting of 1. Vector-borne diseases malaria and dengue, 2. Waterborne diseases diarrhea, 3. Airborne diseases pneumonia, acute respiratory infections, RE, and tuberculosis TB, and 4. Malnutrition, stunting, wasting, and underweight. As doctoral students of the Faculty of Public Health, we feel called to hold an international seminar. We are proud to present an international seminar with the title, Breathing for a Better Tomorrow, Unveiling the Impact of Air Pollution on Our Climate and Health, and keynote speaker by Deputy Minister and Director General of Disease Prevention and Control, Dr. Maxi Rainrondonu, EHSM, Mars. Welcome to this international webinar. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the seminar series 08 of the Faculty of Public Health, Universitas Indonesia. In May 2023, the World Meteorological Organization said there is a 98% chance that at least one of the next 5 years, and the 5-year period as a whole, will be the hottest on record. According to recent research from scientists at the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change (IPCC), average temperatures are already 1.1 degrees Celsius higher than 1850 to 1900 levels. The rate of temperature rise in the last half-century is the highest in 2,000 years, said United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. El Niño and La Niña have different effects in some areas. As a result, Indonesia south of the equator was hit by drought. Rotendao and East Sumba, NTT, also broke the record for the longest rainless days, which is 176 days per October. Climatology researcher at the Center for Climate and Atmosphere of the National Research and Innovation Agency Brin Irma Yuli Haston explained, the temperature condition in Semarang was reported to reach 38 degrees Celsius. This is the effect of climate change. BMKG reports Indonesia's normal monthly average temperature from 1991 to 2020 and Indonesia's monthly average temperature until September 2023. The estimated loss of the health sector due to the impact of climate change throughout 2021 to 2050 is estimated to reach 86% or 21.6 billion United States dollars of national GDP for priority groups of diseases due to the negative impacts of climate change, consisting of 1. Vector-borne diseases malaria and dengue, 2. Waterborne diseases diarrhea, 3. Airborne diseases pneumonia, acute respiratory infections, RE, and tuberculosis TB. And 4. Malnutrition, stunting, wasting, and underweight. As doctoral students of the Faculty of Public Health, we feel called to hold an international seminar. We are proud to present an international seminar with the title, Breathing for a Better Tomorrow, Unveiling the Impact of Air Pollution on Our Climate and Health, and keynote speaker by Deputy Minister and Director General of Disease Prevention and Control, Dr. Maxi Rondonu, EHSM, Mars. Welcome to this international webinar. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the seminar series 08 of the Faculty of Public Health, Universitas Indonesia. In May 2023, the World Meteorological Organization said there is a 98% chance that at least one of the next 5 years, and the 5-year period as a whole, will be the hottest on record. According to recent research from scientists at the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, average temperatures are already 1.1 degrees Celsius higher than 1850 to 1900 levels. The rate of temperature rise in the last half-century is the highest in 2,000 years, said United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. El Niño and La Niña have different effects in some areas. As a result, Indonesia south of the equator was hit by drought. Rotendao and East Sumba, NTT, also broke the record for the longest rainless days, which is 176 days per October. Climatology researcher at the Center for Climate and Atmosphere of the National Research and Innovation Agency Bryn Irma Yuli Haston explained, the temperature condition in Semarang was reported to reach 38 degrees Celsius. This is the effect of climate change. BMKG reports Indonesia's normal monthly average temperature from 1991 to 2020 and Indonesia's monthly average temperature until September 2023. The estimated loss of the health sector due to the impact of climate change throughout 2021 to 2050 is estimated to reach 86% or 21.6 billion United States dollars of national GDP for priority groups of diseases due to the negative impacts of climate change, consisting of 1. Vector-borne diseases malaria and den, 2. Waterborne diseases diarrhea, 3. Airborne diseases pneumonia, acute respiratory infections, RE, and tuberculosis TB, and 4. Malnutrition, stunting, wasting, and underweight. As doctoral students of the Faculty of Public Health, we feel called to hold an international seminar. We are proud to present an international seminar with the title, Breathing for a Better Tomorrow, Unveiling the Impact of Air Pollution on Our Climate and Health, and keynote speaker by Deputy Minister and Director General of Disease Prevention and Control, Dr. Maxi Rondonu, EHSM, Mars. Welcome to this international webinar. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the seminar series 08 of the Faculty of Public Health, Universitas Indonesia. In May 2023, the World Meteorological Organization said there is a 98% chance that at least one of the next 5 years, and the 5-year period as a whole, will be the hottest on record. According to recent research from scientists at the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, average temperatures are already 1.1 degrees Celsius higher than 1850 to 1900 levels. The rate of temperature rise in the last half-century is the highest in 2,000 years, said United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. El Niño and La Niña have different effects in some areas. As a result, Indonesia south of the equator was hit by drought. Rotendao and East Sumba, NTT, also broke the record for the longest rainless days, which is 176 days per October. Climatology researcher at the Center for Climate and Atmosphere of the National Research and Innovation Agency Bryn Irma Yuli Haston explained, the temperature condition in Semarang was reported to reach 38 degrees Celsius. This is the effect of climate change. BMKG reports Indonesia's normal monthly average temperature. From 1991 to 2020, and Indonesia's monthly average temperature until September 2023. The estimated loss of the health sector due to the impact of climate change throughout 2021 to 2050 is estimated to reach 86% or 21.6 billion United States dollars of national GDP for priority groups of diseases due to the negative impacts of climate change, consisting of 1. Vector-borne diseases malaria and dengue, 2. Waterborne diseases diarrhea, 3. Airborne diseases pneumonia, acute respiratory infections, RE, and tuberculosis TB, and 4. Malnutrition, stunting, wasting, and underweight. As doctoral students of the Faculty of Public Health, we feel called to hold an international seminar. We are proud to present an international seminar with the title, Breathing for a Better Tomorrow, Unveiling the Impact of Air Pollution on Our Climate and Health, and keynote speaker by Deputy Minister and Director General of Disease Prevention and Control, Dr. Maxi Rainrondonu, EHSM, Mars. Welcome to this international webinar. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the seminar series 08 of the Faculty of Public Health, Universitas Indonesia. In May 2023, the World Meteorological Organization
Pagi Pak Dekan, sehat?
Selamat pagi.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and participants from around the world, welcome to the international webinar on Breathing for a Better Tomorrow, unveiling the impact of air pollution on our climate and health. I am Chinta Asnawi, your Master of Ceremony for this important and insightful webinar. First of all, we would like to kindly remind all the participants to please fill in the registration details. The link to the registration is available in the chat box. So if you have registered, your name will be used for a lucky draw at the end of the webinar. The registration will be closed at 9 a.m. to allow enough time for the committee to randomly select the names. So make sure you complete the registration link in the chat box before 9 a.m. Some door prizes are available for you to win and will be delivered to your address. We will contact the lucky participant after the webinar for sending the door prize. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start this webinar, it is important that we are sitting in the right and healthy position. Please listen to the following video for ergonomic tips. Dear participant, allow us to share some house rule of our webinar. Participants shall be guided by the following rules. First, for identification purpose, all participants are requested to join the video conference by indicating before their names, which is the acronym or short form of their country and organization they are representing. For example, country, organization, and participant name. Second, if participant would like to raise question or comments, please type through the Q&A icon or the chat room of the Zoom webinar or the YouTube live streaming. The third one, to prevent the noise, kindly keep your microphone mute while you are not speaking and keep personal gadget away from the microphone during the video conference. And lastly, for documentation purpose, the webinar proceedings will be recorded. Ladies and gentlemen, to kickstart this event, please stand as we honor the Indonesian National Anthem and Mars Faculty of Public Health Universitas Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, you may kindly be seated. To officially commence our webinar today, let's begin with the opening remarks. And it is my honor to invite Professor Dr. Mondastri Korib Sudaryo, Dean of the Faculty of Public Health Universitas Indonesia, to share his insight.
Thank you very much, Ms. MC. Can you hear my voice?
Yes,
Hello? Is it clear enough? Good morning. Selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Sejahtera. Our honorable keynote speaker, Dr. Imran Pambudi, Director Communicable Disease Prevention and Control, representing His Excellency Budi Gunadi Sadikin, the Minister of Health of Republic Indonesia. Our honorable panel speakers, Professor Bin Jalaluddin, Chief Investigator in the Center for Safe Air, University of New South Wales, Australia. Professor Budi Haryanto, Faculty of Public Health, Universitas Indonesia. Dr. Nasir Hasan, Regional Advisor, Air Pollution, Environmental Health and Chemical Safety, WHO, CRO. Dr. Sumi Mehta, Vice President of Climate and Environmental Health, Atlas Strategies USA. Distinguished colleagues from government agencies, universities, and private sectors. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to greet and warmly welcome every one of you. Thanks God that we are able to come together here, both offline and online, to attend our international seminar entitled Breathing for Better Tomorrow, Unveiling the Impact of Air Pollution on Our Climate and Health. It is an honor for us to be the host of this important event. Dear ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, the triple planetary crisis consists of environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, and climate change is a real danger threatening many aspects of our lives. In the year 2023, the Earth witnessed a record-breaking rise in temperature. The statistics, the warnings, and the scientific consensus leave us with no room for doubt of the crisis. The today's seminar will focus on one particular aspect of this crisis, the air pollution. The very substance of life, the air we breathe, is under attack. The attack has far-reaching consequences that affect not just the environment, but also each person's and our society's health. Understanding the complexity of this problem, we need to realize how important and urgent it is to discuss and increase public awareness, foster collaboration, and provide education. We would like to highly appreciate our eminent speakers, resource persons, experts, researchers, practitioners, scholars, and all relevant stakeholders who are kindly and actively participating in this today's seminar to enlighten us on finding answers to this complex web of challenges. Their insight, deep knowledge, and wide experience will hopefully guide us to direct our collective efforts in mitigating the multidimensional enormous effects of air pollution. Dear distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this webinar is expected to produce not only discussion, but also call for action. As we listen, learn, and contemplate, let us also consider each of our important role in the broader scope of environmental and public health perspective. Hopefully, this is not just a scientific seminar, but also a catalyst for significant change. Once again, I extend my sincere welcome to each one of you. Your presence here today signifies a commitment to understanding, collaboration, and most importantly, a better tomorrow. Without further ado, by the name of God, let us start the seminar. We wish you a fruitful, enlightening, and meaningful discussion. Thank you very much. God bless all of us. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Sudaryo, for the interesting remarks. Now it is my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Imran Pambudi, MPHM, as the Director, Communicable Disease Prevention and Control, Ministry of Health, Republic of Indonesia, who will deliver the keynote speech on behalf of His Excellency, Insinyur Budi Gunadi Sadikin, CHFC, CLU, the Minister of Health of the Republic of Indonesia. Please welcome the keynote speech with a round of virtual applause.
Distinguished Dean of Faculty of Public Health of the University of Indonesia, distinguished professors, speakers, students of the doctoral study program in Public Health Sciences of University of Indonesia, all participants. So allow me to speak on behalf of Pak Budi Gunadi Sadikin, Ministry of Health of Indonesia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and healthy greetings. So, first of all, let us extend our thanks to God Almighty for giving us health to attend a webinar on public health issues organized by the Faculty of Public Health of the University of Indonesia. I think I only deliver the speech only, not the presentation. So the organizing committee can take down the presentation, please. So Dean, professors, ladies and gentlemen, in accordance with the decree number 17 in 2023 on health, it is said that environmental health is intended to a healthy environment quality, both physical, chemical, biological, and also social, enabling everyone to the highest level of health. In the health transformation, environmental health is part of the first pillar, the transformation of primary services related to the education of the population towards sanitation and hygiene of the environment. And climate change will impact to the food security and health security. According to the WHO, air pollution is an air contamination caused by one or more physical, chemical or biological substance in the atmosphere in amounts that may be harmful to health or cause damage. The most common source of air pollution came from the factories, vehicles, forest fires, and wood stoves. The most common indicator of air pollution is by measuring particulate matter, commonly called PM2.5, with a safe limit in the 24 hours measurement rate is 25, and in the 1 year rate is around 10. So the measurement of PM2.5 in the Jabodetabek region in the last 2 years indicates a trend that exceeds the safe limit in the WHO and Jakarta. The trend of respiratory disease is rising in the past year. Disease prevention can be done through a healthy environment program. The WHO states that globally, 24% of death caused by disease can actually be prevented by environmental modification. The environment has a role in diseases such as malaria, dengue, tuberculosis, diarrhea, neonatal deaths, cardiovascular, and also cancer. In Indonesia alone, respiratory disease such as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, pneumonia, asthma, lung cancer, and also tuberculosis are among the 15 diseases that the highest cases according to data in 2019. Meanwhile, the overview of the most cost-intensive diseases in the National Health Insurance in 2022 shows that the total cost required the treatment of pneumonia, TB, and also asthma and COPD, and also lung cancer is amount about 10 trillion rupiah. So air pollution contributes significantly to the occurrence of respiratory disease, such as COPD, it's around 37%, pneumonia, around 32%, asthma, around 28%, lung cancer, 13%, and also tuberculosis is around 12%. The air contamination is also the 5th highest risk factor for death in Indonesia after obesity and smoking risk factors. So to address the problem in air pollution, the Ministry of Health has issued a decree number 1625 in 2023 on the Committee of the Control of Respiratory Diseases and the Impact of Air Pollution. And this committee has formed 4 areas for its handling. First, it's about air quality management. Second, quality management of clinical services. The third, education. And the last, about the promotion and advocacy, as well as the research and development of studies. Each field has tasks and programs to work with output that can jeopardize respiratory disease and the impact of air pollution on public health. And in addition, the Ministry of Health has also integrated the data of the Standard Air Pollution Index, we call it ISPO, into a Satu Sehat application, so that the public can take the necessary measurement to prevent disease caused by air pollution. For example, if the ISPO data showed moderate or high level of pollutants, then should use mask if activation outside the home. So in order to strengthen the role of health in supporting air quality monitoring and reducing risks and health impacts, it is necessary to reference laboratory to identify types and source of pollution. Second, public education introduction of intervention. The third, recommendation for using mask. The fourth, as a disease surveillance. And the last, the availability of optimal health facility. Finally, I hope the entire component of society, especially those who are active in the field of health, which is regulators, practitioners, and academics, will contribute to the maximum possible participation in addressing air pollution issue in accordance with the respective competence. Thank you. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and also healthy greetings.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Imran, for sharing the keynote speech. Following that, we have a special presentation from our sponsor. And let's directly direct our attention to the screen for an exclusive video from our sponsors. Allow us to acknowledge the contributions from our valuable sponsors that also supports this webinar. Thank you to PT Pundarika Atma Sumesta, PT Toyota Motor Manufacturing Indonesia, Pertamina Drilling Service Indonesia, Bank Syariah Indonesia, PT Supraco Indonesia, PT Vale Indonesia Tbk, Pertamina International Shipping, Pertamina Transcontinental, PT Kino Indonesia Tbk, PT Rejeki Abadi Sakti, PT Berkat Sentosa Utama, PT Nusantara Tracer, PT Indra Karya Persero Survey and Investigation Division, PT Pasaman Petro Energi, PT Patra Drilling Contractor, PT Trijaya Global Mandiri, PT Kartika Bina Medikatama Medika Plaza. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to embark on an insightful journey with our distinguished panels of speakers. Moderating this session is Mr. Pibo Dimas from Bicara Udara. Let's warmly welcome him to introduce our speakers and moderate this session. Over to you, Mr. Pibo.
Okay, good morning, dear participants. I'm Pibo Dimas Perdana. I'm a Public Affairs Manager of Bicara Udara. I'll be your moderator in this panel session. We are honored to have 4 distinguished experts with us now. We shall open questions and answer sessions after all presentations from the 4 speakers are completed. You may type your question in the chat box. Some participants who are actively raise questions or comments will have the opportunity to win door prize. And allow me to introduce our first speaker who will present about the topic, the tug of war, air pollution, climate change, and your well-being. So Prof. Budi Haryanto will be the speaker at this moment. Received his PhD in epidemiology at the Faculty of Public Health, the University of Indonesia, 2 master degrees in environmental health and epidemiology, from the University of Indonesia and the University of California at Los Angeles, respectively, the 2 bachelor degrees in environmental health and sanitation technology. So for Prof. Budi Haryanto, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Mas Pibu, as the moderator. And good morning, all. It is my honor, actually, to be invited as the speaker in this very important webinar. Yeah. And I also would like to say hello to Professor Jal. I saw okay. How are you, Prof. Jal? Yeah, Prof. Jal is actually my colleague and also my old friend. And we also writing, we have some project together as well as what do you call it? Yeah, visiting professor, yeah. Before COVID-19 pandemic, Prof. Jal coming to Faculty of Public Health to our department, and then I also went to UNSW. And in the near future, we will have also the joint study for air pollution, climate change, and health as well. And I would like also to say hello to Pak Dekan from Mondastri.
Greeting to Professor Budi.
Yeah, hopefully you are in the good health today.
Thank
Very,
you. Thanks.
very excellent morning actually. Okay, I'd like to start with my duty today. Okay, okay. Hopefully you already see the. Wait. All right. Okay. It's clear. My slide, Mr. Bibo. It's okay. Can I start? Okay. Because no response, I believe it is okay. All right. As assigned by the host of the webinar, I have to present about the tug of war, climate change, air pollution, and human health. This is a very hot issue actually right now, or even in the last 3 months ago. Yeah, a lot of noises about the air pollution, and right now, and also it's been connected to the climate change as well as this week and since last week there is a climate conference annually in Dubai. Yeah. Hopefully everything about the climate change as well as air pollution will be got the good solutions. Okay, for the question for the duty for the my slides, the tug of war, I would like to give the short answer. There are the answer is actually air pollution, climate change, and health impacts are intercorrelated. Air pollution affected to human health and well-being. Climate change is also affected to human health and well-being. While climate change and air pollution are interconnected. That's actually the short answer. And let's go further to the detail. Started with climate change and health impact. As we already know about the climate change, is actually encompasses global warming, but refers to the broader range of change that are happening to our planet. These include rising sea levels, shrinking mountain glaciers, accelerating ice melt in Greenland, Antarctica, and also in the Arctic, and shift in flower plant blooming times. These are all consequences of warming, which is caused mainly by people burning fossil fuels and putting our heat trapping gases into the air. And the illustration is like this. We can see there that what do you call it? Greenhouse gases, yeah, it's actually uh, generate global warming as in the explanation is that the greenhouse effect is the sun's rays penetrate to the atmosphere, but when the heat is reflected off, the surface cannot escape back into space. Gases produced by the burning of fossil fuel prevent the heat from leaving the atmosphere. These greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, chlorofluorocarbons, water vapor, methane, and also nitrous oxide. The excess heat in the atmosphere has caused the average global temperature to rise over time. So it's actually the phenomenon of global warming. And we, I believe that we also had learned that the biggest sources of greenhouse gases is actually from our activities, our daily activities. For example, we can see from the left side, coal mining, yeah. Coal mining emitted all of the air pollution as well as the greenhouse gases, and also thawing permafrost and coal plants, industrial processes, industrial agriculture that emitted methane, and crop burning, fertilization, land transportation, landfills, forest burning, oil production, and also air transport. So this is actually our daily life, our activities that all produce the greenhouse gases. And I'd like to emphasize here that when these activities emitted greenhouse gases, it is at the same time the air pollution, of course, is also emitted. So the air pollution emitted from our daily activities is, as well as included greenhouse gases. Okay, and we can see here that because of the trap of the trap of sun rays, yeah, and this affected to the global warming, and we can see the evidence that since 1880, before the industrial area, the temperature increasing hotter and hotter up to now, and even some of experts estimated that The year 2023 is the hottest temperature in our planet ever. And the effect of the global warming is, we can see also this the illustration of the reducing of ice, sea ice, yeah, on the North Polar, yeah, becoming decreased, and as well as the green line, ice in the green line, we can see the progress of decreasing the ice from 2002 to until 2020, 2014, as well as in the near in the just currently. So you can see that the snow, the ice melting in North Pole as well as the South Pole. And this also affected to the increasing of global sea level rise. Yeah, from 1993 to 2019, the trend is always increasing, and this is also the hottest issue in the Jakarta, in the coastal of Jakarta. Yeah, and in general, climate change impacts actually the first actually to the environment, the decreasing of the environment, the it's because of increased natural disaster occurrence, and then the worsen air pollution, water scarcity, lowered soil fertility, and so on. And of course, this will affect to the economic, such as impact on rice, fish, prawn, other production, and others impact on the economic, and then this affected to human health, uh, from the diseases to the death, and unfortunately, the most vulnerable population is the poor population. And the Lancet, our journal, the top journal on health, it's mentioned in 2009 that the climate change is the biggest global health threat of the 21st century. This is actually the challenge for us who are working and also expert, hopefully, in the health discipline. That it is much more as our responsibility to do something. And we can share the scheme of how the climate change is affected the health. You can see that by changing in climate, it's also affected increased global temperature, extreme weather and disaster, precipitation extreme, sea level rise, changes in land use and growing seasons, and this will affect to the extreme heat, air and water pollution, reduced food and water quality, changes in infectious diseases and vector transmission, increasing allergen and others, and then directly and indirectly will affect it to our health, the population health, yeah, like in the direct impact it to heat-related illnesses, and indirect impact it to cardiovascular diseases, stroke, and other chronic conditions, injuries and death, mental and neurological disorder, zoonotic factor and waterborne diseases, respiratory diseases, and asthma. And probably it's also important is affected to malnutrition, yeah, because of the agriculture problem. And in more detail, impact to the health is we can see here in the central circle is actually the changing of climate, yeah, And then the other circle is rising temperature, more extreme weather, rises sea level rise, rising sea level, and also the increasing CO2 levels, and uh, then followed by the problem in air pollutions that affected to respiratory diseases, changing in vector ecology affected to vector-borne factors related diseases, yeah, and increasing allergen is also affected directly to respiratory allergy, asthma, and others. Okay, and WHO 2012 what you call they launched the statement that very surprising actually for us in the health discipline. It's mentioned that the cost of death up to 2100, it's the general death will be the general trend of the death is still showing the increasing, but the proportion of death due to the hunger, preventable diseases, and curable diseases is decreasing, yeah, up to 2100. And on the other side, the death caused by the climate change, the proportion is increased. So you can see the total of deaths will be increasing up to 2100 estimated by WHO. So this actually our challenge. We can avoid this problem, yeah, as the health expert, health people. So yeah, this is challenging for us. Then in Indonesia, the climate change is also associated with rainfall, temperature, and relative humidity, and this will affect to the vector population dynamic and transmission of especially malaria and dengue. This climate change is also affect to the air quality and affected to the increasing of pneumonia and acute respiratory infections. And also the temperature, increasing the temperature affected to the diarrhea diseases, and the decline of agriculture with the output of food shortage. This also believes that because of the food consumption, lack of food consumption, and affected to the malnutrition as well as the stunting. Okay, the IPCC, International Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change of the UNFCCC, yeah, had launched the guidance how to assess the impact of climate change, not only to the health impact, but also to others, like the poverty and other. And this method actually, this method is mentioned as the vulnerability methods, yeah, that involving the component of exposure, sensitivity, and adaptation capacity. And you can see here, there are 5 levels from the very low of coping range index, and the low with the green color, and medium in the yellow color, high vulnerability as the brown color, and the very high vulnerability is red color. And we studied in 2013 the vulnerability of dengue hemorrhagic fever in 20 district and city in Indonesia. Of the 5 provinces, you can see here that in Jakarta and Banten, we can see that in 2011, the dengue fever, the vulnerability of dengue fever in green and brown. But a year later, in 2012, the vulnerability if worse, yeah, it showed that the color is high and very high to dengue hemorrhagic fever. And another example is also in East Java. We can see here red and green, so high and very high vulnerable. Okay, and the study also showing the distribution of dengue fever patients based on their home. We can see in Jakarta, in central Jakarta, that actually those who experience with dengue fever scatter, yeah, it's not for the whole of the area, but just scatter in certain area. This actually the houses of the those who had dengue hemorrhagic fever by coordinates. And we can see here in Padang, yeah, those who had experience with dengue hemorrhagic fever is also in the grouping in the certain area, as well as when we see in the Banyuwangi district, grouping group it in certain area. This mapping actually very important to the program of prevention and control of dengue hemorrhagic fever, because if we would like to do prevention, we can focus on the certain area, yeah, and all of the resources should be focused on the hot, what do you call it, in the hotspot, yeah, in the hotspot, and of course the success of the program will be clearer, can be achieved. And this is actually the suggestion for those who responsible of the to prevent the wait, I cannot see the title actually. Indonesian strategies and action to tackling effect of climate change to human health. So I like to read it pointedly. The develop surveillance early warning system, strengthen working group on integrated and community-based health program, deploy community-based climate health information system, integrate health information system and data into the 6 pillars of health transformations, advocacy effort assuring that health takes a more central position in multi-sectoral legislation approaches and action, establish a shared common framework, the need to translate national policy to the local context, and strengthen leadership and facilitation skill for effective collaborative governance of health adaptation at local level. As also we can share, this is suggested by the CDC, how to tackling the how to adapt the climate change in terms of in the context of health discipline. You can see here that they give bridge, building resilience against climate effect. It's contain of identify the severity of climate impact and vulnerable population, determine the effect of climate change, design intervention for the health impact of greatest concern, distribute a written plan for implementation, and evaluate the effectiveness and edit plan. We may also look at this carefully if we would like to adopt as well as in America. And now go further to climate change and air pollution. That is the explanation. Actually, global climate change will have significant and adverse impact on air pollution. Changes in meteorological pattern of temperature, precipitation, and natural disaster will interact with air pollution, such as more hot and sunny days can lead to the degradation of the secondary pollutant ozone. Higher temperature can increase the risk of sulfuric and nitric acid deposition through acceleration of the oxidation process in the atmosphere, increased number and extent wildfire, increasing flooding, which may lead to higher exposure to mycotoxin and higher temperature, and CO2 will fuel the growth of pollen producing plant, that's leading to the higher level of aeroallergens. And air pollution due to the climate forces from air pollutant and greenhouse gases have a large impact on climate change. Air pollution can both drive climate change and play a role in respiratory and cardiovascular diseases, impairment, and in the respiratory and central nervous system, as well as increased risk of cancer. And I believe that we are also familiar with the air pollutant related human health. This very common to be stated, to be discussed by us with the health discipline, like particulate matter, PM 2.5, PM 2.5, gases pollutant, primary gases pollutants, secondary gases, photochemical pollutant, as well as VOC, ozone, and other greenhouse gases. And if we look at how the health impact from the air pollution, let's start with the WHO statement in 2019 on the 10 threats of the 10 threat to global health. It is that air pollution actually as the world's largest environmental health risk. We can see the cause of death 2019 based on the report on the our world in data. We can see here that the death caused by top 5 diseases here actually related to air pollution. Okay, and if we can see also from the IFME data, okay, I choose the 5 Asian countries here from 1990 to 2019. We can see the trend of deaths related to the ambient particulate matter. Almost all are increasing, becoming increased and increased. It seems that the exposure of the air pollution is affected significantly to the death. And actually, the impact to our health, the air pollution can be occur in the short-term effect, such as exacerbation of asthma, as well as acute respiratory infection. And then the most dangerous one is to the long-term effects, yeah, like stroke and lung cancer and others. In more detail, we can see here, it will affect it to the very important organ just on our body, yeah, like we can see it as an example, to affect it to the brain and nervous system. It may cause the dementia, impair motor function, impair cognitive function, strokes, reduced intelligence, mental health problem. Almost all problem on our brain and nervous system occurs because of air pollutions. And the other effect, yeah, here to the cardiovascular system, to respiratory system, to skin and blood and bones, to reproductive system and abdominal organ. This is scary. And if we see the death linked to the air pollutions, WHO is also reported in 2019 that about 7 million people die prematurely every year from air pollution. And if we can see the proportion here, 20% of death because of pneumonia, 20% of because of stroke, 24% death is because of ischemic heart disease, 19% from chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, COPD, and 7% from lung cancer. And what happened? The air pollution exposure to the children's health, you can see here. It will affect to stunt brain development, reduce lung function, and trigger asthma, as well as the physical development. And of course, in the future, this will affect these children to the stroke, cardiovascular diseases, chronic respiratory illnesses, and cancer. This is a part of the evidence that actually PM10, PM2.5 is also significantly associated with the acute respiratory infection, pneumonia, as well as asthma bronchiale. This based on our study. And most currently, we also involved in the development of policy note of in 2022. That now as the document by the documents belong to the Bapanas. The study is actually the study of the air pollution and health impact of energy emission in the transportation sector. And in the part of diseases related air pollution, we found that in Jakarta, based on the data of 2016-2021, we found that every increasing per 10 microgram per cubic meter PM2.5 is associated with the increasing about 6% of pneumonia cases, while for SO2 associated with the increasing about 7 pneumonia cases, and for PM10 is associated with the increasing about 1.5 acute respiratory infection cases. And if we can see the trend of asthma, bronchopneumonia, and pneumonia in Jakarta since 2017 is showing the increasing and up to 2019, but decreasing in 2020 because of the pandemic of COVID-19, and we 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 thought that it is because of underreported for the asthma, bronchopneumonia, and pneumonia reported. But when we can see the report from the Ministry of Health, the ISPA and pneumonia trend from 2021 to 2023 showing the increasing. And in Jakarta, the trend among the cities is for the acute respiratory infection and pneumonia is also showing all are increasing. And another evidence the association between PM 2.5 with asthma and abnormal lung function we found in Tangerang and Makassar, where the asthma put the same 1.3% is actually high among 7,000 subjects of study, and 21% and 24%, it's mean that one among 5 persons in Tangerang and one among 4 persons in Makassar having lung function impairment. It's quite high, and we can see here we found that 38.5% lung function impairment among host 5 in Pulau Gadung industrial area. And when we do a cohort study with among school children in North Jakarta compared to South Jakarta, we found also about 5 to 12% of acute respiratory infection occur had been experienced by the children. Among public transportation driver in Jakarta, we found that more than half of those drivers having lung function impairment because of their most frequent exposed to the PM 2.5 on the road. And it's for those who use the commuter who use air-conditioned car from Depok to Gatot Subroto, we also did the assessment for 24 hours with personal exposure measurement. We found that during on the road, they inhaled very high, about 9 times higher than WHO standards for more than 2 hours, as well as when on the road back home, they're also very high. And if we see for the CO, carbon monoxide inhale inside of the car, closed car with the air condition, it's also very high. It's about 5 times higher than WHO standard, WHO guideline during on the road, as well for when on the road to go to the office, as well as when the back home.
Prof. Budi, I have to remind you, your time is remaining for 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay, it's enough.
Yeah. Okay.
Speedy my slide. Okay, based on the medical record in several hospitals in Jakarta, we found that the diseases related to air pollution actually about 60%, more than half, due to the air pollution exposure. And it caused about I mean, the treatment cost for those who had these diseases in rupiah, it's about 38.5 trillions, or estimated about 3 billion US dollar. And this also measure for several diseases by vital strategies. In Jakarta in 2022, the cost of illness is about 3 million US dollar. I think Sumi Mehta, our presenter, will be explain this more detail later. And you can see here that based on our 4 year study in Indonesia, actually, we found that based on the data from 1992 to 2013, we can estimate the air pollutions for almost all of the parameters, showing the increasing trend. Yeah, to 2030, we can see here VOC, CO, PM 2.5, PM 10, and OH. Yeah, all are increasing, and the color actually the the the, the contributor for the pollutant. And this is our strategy, just doing the model. How if we change the fuel quality into Euro 4 standard. Right now, we have about 50% of fuel above the Euro 2 standard from the Pertamax 92 octane, yeah. But for 80% of user still using Pertalite that below the safe standard, below the Euro 2 standard. So we trying to generate the model here. If the Euro 4 standard implemented in 2017, in 2020, and 2033, and we see that we found that the decreasing of some parameter of air pollutant is decreased. This is also for PM10, and how the strategy to control the pollution. Of course, first, reduce vehicles on the road, reduce the number of vehicles on the roads, improve fuel quality and or implement clean energy, adequate engine technology, manage land transportation, and increase the number of air quality management system. And for human, they should read the daily forecast to see what air pollution forecast look like. Close your door and windows when the air quality index is over than 151. It's equal with the red color, unhealthy, and recirculate the air in your car while you drive for a few minutes. Wear a mask that filters out worse air particles. Take a shower after spending a lot of time outside. Travel to work a bit earlier so you aren't exposed to as much exhaust, and switch to a healthy diet so you aren't as vulnerable. And for the last slide, I'd like to show here Professor Frank Werner, microbiologist, Australian Academy of Science, Royal Society, the professor in the School of Medicine, ANU, that had very prominent study about the evolution from molecular level to the ecosystem and the planet. He mentioned in 1985 the very popular statement actually that evidence of global warming is in. Our fate is sealed. We are going to be extinct. Whatever we do now is too late. Less than half of the world's population will be able to survive in a degraded environment in 2085. We also learn about the result in 2021 IPCC Corp of the Party conference in Glasgow. Yeah, some of environmental experts also mentioned that started in 2050 there will be a big degradation of environment. Degradation environment will be happen. So it looks like in line with what Professor Frankfurter estimation. I think this is also a challenge for us. And lastly, I'd like to conclude only one word, just do action. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the insightful and fruitful presentation from Prof. Budi. I think the urgency and your message has been conveyed very well, Prof. Budi. So for the next session, we will have Professor Bin Jalaluddin. So Prof. Bin Jalaluddin will deliver a presentation with the title Unmasking the Health Effects of Air Pollution Exposure Throughout the Lifetime. So this is a brief introduction from Professor Jalaluddin. Professor Jalaluddin is an epidemiologist and public health physician and conjoined professor in the School of Population Health, University of New South Wales. He is a chief investigator in the Healthy Environments and Lives Network, HIL Network, and associate investigator in the Center for Safe Air. He is a member of the WHO Southeast Asia Regional Expert Group on Environmental Determinants of Health and Climate Change. He was previously an expert advisor to the WHO UNEP Thematic Working Group on Air Quality, external reviewer of the Air Quality Guidelines, and external reviewer of UNEP Science-Based Solutions for Air Pollution. Professor Jalaluddin has published widely on the health effects of ambient air pollution, forest fire smoke, heat waves, and green space. So for Professor Jalaluddin, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm just wondering about my slides. Okay. Firstly, I would like to, I think I've lost. Next slide, please. Firstly, I'd like to thank Professor Sudarya, the Faculty of Public Health, Universitas Indonesia, for inviting me to participate in this forum and in this symposium. Next slide, please. In my presentation, I've been asked to talk about 6 areas: the overview of health issues at different life stages, specific long-term health effects, and how they manifest over a person's lifetime, specific populations or age groups that are more vulnerable to the health effects, regional or demographic variations in health effects of air pollution and why, the research findings that demonstrate a link between air pollution and specific health conditions, and measures that individuals and policymakers can take to mitigate the health impacts of air pollution across the lifespan. Next, please. For the next few slides, I'm going to just talk generally about air pollution. As you know, air pollution is a complex picture, and Professor Budi has touched on this a bit. We normally, when we talk about air pollution and health, most commonly we talk about what's called the common air pollutants, where there are ambient air quality standards. So it's around ozone, particulate matter, it's PM10 or PM2.5, and the numbers 10 and 2.5 refer to the size of the particles. So PM10 particles are those particles that are less than 10 microns in diameter, and PM2.5 are smaller particles which are less than 2.5 microns in diameter. And there's nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, lead, and then there are a whole group of air toxics, or nearly 200 chemicals that are air toxics, like benzene, toluene. These are the air toxics. But more broadly, in air pollution, we also could consider things like viruses, pollens, aeroallergens, and now more importantly, there's a greater emphasis on microplastics. So the PM2.5 particles, or what we call fine particles, I'll mainly focus on PM2.5 because these are the particles where we have good evidence for health effects and which contribute most to the disease burden. And so they're much smaller than the human hair, and you could probably fit about 20 to 30 fine particles at the in the diameter of on the cross section of the human hair. Next, please. And the size of the particle is important. So we have fine particles, which are PM2.5. We have ultrafine particles, which are again much smaller than PM2.5s, and we have the larger particles. And the reason this is important is because the fine particles can go deep into our respiratory system, into our alveoli, where oxygen transfer takes place. And the ultrafine particles can even get into the bloodstream and gets transported throughout the body. Next slide, please. Particles, unlike gases, can be different depending on the source. So industrial emission fine particles might be quite different from the particles from the exhaust fumes of a car. Sea salt, which is fine particles found near in the coastal areas, again would be the composition would be quite different. So for example, in the picture shown here, into the diesel particle, there's an elemental carbon core and surrounded by organic carbon compounds. We'll have sulfates and nitrates around it. There'll be metals around it, and there may be other toxic materials on the surface. And this could be viruses, for example, during the COVID pandemic, it could carry the COVID virus. It may carry aeroallergens. So the fine particles are a mixture of complex chemicals. And so they're more difficult to study, unlike the pure gases, sulfur dioxide, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, the pure gases, and we can do laboratory studies with them quite easily. Whereas the particles are complex and the effects may depend on the source of the particles. Next slide, please. So for example, this slide says that the strongest evidence to date of increased risk of cardiovascular disease is found from coal combustion and diesel fuel traffic. So we think the particles from coal combustion and from diesel traffic are the most serious, and therefore future mitigation efforts should focus on the monitoring and the regulation of the PM 2.5 from these two sources. Next slide, please. This is an important slide. This slide shows the concentration response relationship for fine particles. So for example, on the x-axis, you've got the fine particle concentration, and the y-axis is the risk to health. So when you have extreme levels, from the high and extreme levels of air pollution, the curve is quite flat. And when you look at the low levels of air pollution, the blue area on the left-hand side, there's a very steep curve. Now, what this tells us, it tells us two things. One is if you are in a high pollution country or region, if you reduce your air pollution only a small amount, they won't make much difference to your risk because the curve is quite flat. So you have to make a big difference, a big reduction in your air pollution, your PM 2.5 air pollution, to start seeing any reduction in the risk. So going from extreme to high, there's not much change to your risk. Going from high to moderate levels of air pollution, there is some increasing change, increasing reduction, but going from moderate to low is where you will see the greatest change. The other thing that this also tells us is that there's no safe level of air pollution. There's no safe level of PM 2.5 air pollution. So the various studies done in low pollution countries, for example, in Europe, in North America, Canada, Australia, where we have low levels of air pollution compared to many, many other countries, we are still finding health effects. Next slide, please. And this has already been mentioned by Professor Budi. When we're looking at the impacts of air pollution, the health impacts of air pollution, it depends on the concentration of the air pollutants and depends on our exposure. If there is no exposure, there's no health effects. So there may be some people, for example, outdoor workers, might be more exposed to air pollution. If you live in a high air pollution area, you obviously will be much more exposed to air pollution. So the exposure is important. And then finally, our vulnerability. We know that older people and young children are more vulnerable to air pollution. Pregnant women are more vulnerable to air pollution. Poorer people are more vulnerable to air pollution. If you're wealthy, you might be more able to afford air purifiers and those masks that you can use to reduce your exposure to air pollution. Or you might be able to move your house from shift from a high pollution area to a low pollution area. So there are many factors that can affect our vulnerability. So these three factors, the air pollution or the environmental hazard, our exposure, and our vulnerability, these three factors interact to which will then lead to the health effect. Next slide, please. So the health effects of different air pollutants. It can affect the central nervous system in terms of dementia and cognitive decline, and we have learning problems in children. It affects the lungs in terms of asthma, breathing difficulties, lung cancer, COPD. Affects the cardiovascular system in terms of heart disease, heart failure, and also risk of diabetes is increased. And there's a whole range of other diseases that aren't listed on this slide. Now there's more recent evidence on kidney disease and also bone disease. Next slide, please. So when we look at the effects of air pollution throughout life, so we have during pregnancy, air pollution exposure around the time of pregnancy can lead to low birth weight, and we think also preterm delivery or prematurity. It's also during pregnancy, exposure to air pollution may increase the risk of gestational diabetes, and that will then lead to neonatal problems or problems with the newborn. In children, we think the problems might be due to asthma, slower development of the lung function, developmental problems, more wheezing and cough, and more importantly, the start of atherosclerosis. So we think heart disease in older people, the beginning of the atherosclerosis, which leads to heart attacks, starts in children. In adults, there's asthma, coronary heart disease, stroke, lung cancer, COPD, diabetes, and then in the elderly, there'll be accelerated decline in your lung function, there'll be the dementia and the decrease in cognitive function, diabetes, heart attacks, heart failures, and stroke. So although although we have listed various health conditions under the 4 groups, there's also a lot of crossover. Next slide, please. So, for example, when we look at outdoor air pollution and deaths, and in 2019, there were nearly 7 million deaths worldwide because of air pollution. And air pollution, indoor and outdoor, contribute about 12% of total global deaths. And of the air pollution, indoor and outdoor, 2.5 contribute 11% of the deaths, and ozone, I think, about 1% of the deaths. And the image at the bottom of the slide is the contribution of air pollution to the various diseases. And Professor Haryanto has already mentioned this, so I'll just mention a few. So for COPD, about 40% of COPD deaths are due to air pollution. And in lung cancer deaths, I think it's about 20%. Ischemic heart disease is about 20%. So a large proportion of the non-communicable diseases, of the NCDs, the deaths from NCDs are due to air pollution. Next slide, please. Now this is just a slide to show that the risk of mortality or the risk of deaths from PM is different from different countries. So I think I've showed, and on my screen it's a bit difficult to read, but I think I've highlighted China, and Japan, and the United States. And if you look at the last column, which is the effects of PM 2.5, and the increased risk of death from PM 2.5. So in China, the increased risk of death is about 0.4%. In the US, I think it's about 1.8%. So there's quite this big difference in risk of deaths from PM 2.5 in the 2 countries. And the reasons are not quite clear. Why? It may be because of different vulnerabilities. It may be because the PM 2.5 are from different sources in China and in the US. But right now, we're still not quite clear why the risks are different in different countries. Next slide, please. Now this slide shows smoke, or fire smoke, PM 2.5, and asthma hospitalizations and ED visits. The top table looks at asthma hospital admissions, and here we see adults and the elderly have a higher risk compared to children. When we look at ED visits, emergency department visits. Females have a slightly higher risk of emergency department visits compared to males. And again, the elderly have a much higher risk compared to adults and children. Next slide, please. And children are a particularly high risk. And this is very important. Their lungs are still developing, and air pollution can interfere with the biological process. Their bodies are less able to metabolize, detoxify, and excrete the toxic materials contained in air pollution. Their brains are still developing, and neurotoxins in air pollution can affect their cognitive development. They inhale more air per unit body weight than adults. They're more active and they breathe in more air pollution. And finally, babies born to women who are more exposed to air pollution during the pregnancy are more likely to be premature and low birth weight. And this last point is very important. And next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide. And that's because of this thinking about the Barker hypothesis. The Barker hypothesis is about the fetal origins of adult disease. And the hypothesis is that stresses during the perinatal period increase the risk of diseases later in adulthood. So these diseases include obesity, metabolic syndrome and diabetes, coronary artery disease, and stroke. So what we're saying here is any kind of insults or stress or exposure to toxins, exposure to air pollution around the gestational period before pregnancy and during pregnancy will have long-term effects later in life. So we really need, so pregnancy or women who are pregnant are in a high risk group. Next slide, please. So just two examples about impact of air pollution in children. The first one is some work we did, which includes Professor Budi, air pollution and cognitive function in Indonesian children. We looked at some routinely collected survey data from Indonesia, and the conclusion we came to was that children who lived in forest fire-prone provinces all their lives performed significantly worse in repeated RCPM scores compared with children who lived in non-forest fire-prone provinces all their lives. And these were fires mainly in Sumatra, the provinces in Sumatra. And another study which we did in Australia, looking at PM2.5 and carotid artery intima media thickness in Australian children. And we found that exposure to relatively low PM2.5 might have effects on the intima media thickness which is a marker for atherosclerosis in children even as young as 12 years of age. So children 12 years of age were showing increased in the intima media thickness, which means that they're more likely to have heart attacks later in life. Next slide, please. Air pollution and developmental gestational diabetes.
Sorry, Prof. Jalal, I have to remind you, you have 5 minutes to go.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's nearly done. So in the first trimester, sulfur dioxide increased the risk of gestational diabetes. Pre-pregnancy ozone decreased the gestational diabetes risk, and this study did not find effects of PM2.5, PM10, or nitrogen dioxide. Next slide, please. Air pollution, cardiometabolic diseases. For example, inflammatory responses to diet and environmental factors key mechanisms that explain the epidemic in diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Air pollution may provide low-level synergism with other factors for type 2 diabetes. And I guess the important thing here is that many of the low-income countries, like the stroke burden in low-income countries is great. And these low-income countries not only have higher risk factors for stroke, but they also have high levels of air pollution. So this makes things much worse. Next slide, please. And these are, when we're looking at dementia, there are some modifiable factors which are associated with dementia and cognitive decline. And for the first time in the Lancet, they've mentioned that air pollution is a potentially modifiable risk factor for dementia. Only about 2%, but there is something we can do about it. Next slide, please. There's some more recent papers looking at the telomere length, cellular aging, and air pollution. The telomere are those bits at the ends of the chromosomes. And there are a few papers now, a bit of research more recently looking at the telomere length and aging. And one paper suggested that increase of 5, I think 3 micrograms per meter cube of long-term exposure to PM2.5 leads to 3% shorter telomeres, equivalent to a loss of 5 to 7 years of life. And another paper suggested that short-term PM2.5 exposure could accelerate the speed of biological aging. So these are only recent papers, and this research area is still very new, but it'll be interesting to see where this research leads to. Next slide, please. So in terms of what can we do, in terms of the policy connections for action on safe air or safer air. So we have you look at the second row, we have the sources of air pollution, different sources of air pollution, the different settings of air, the different settings, could be school settings, could be childcare settings, and then we can look at the susceptible populations or the vulnerable populations. What are the different kinds of vulnerable populations? And then from there, we need to have integrated solutions. And so we can look at the sources. What can we do for the sources of air pollution? What can we do in the different settings of air pollution? And what can we do for the different susceptible populations? So for the populations, it might be at the individual level, wearing masks or having indoor air purifiers. But these things are expensive. And so many poor people may not be able to afford it. So we need to look at the equity issue here. Wearing masks can be useful, but it has to be the right kind of mask. The paper mask and surgical mask don't work very well. So you've got to use P2 mask or the N95 mask or equivalent. But we need to look at integrated solutions. And I won't go into all the different solutions because we're lacking in time. So I'll finish off with my next slide. Next slide, please. What is very pleasing to know, and this is a great step forward, if you now go to the WHO website, the portal on non-communicable diseases, the World Health Organization has now listed air pollution as a risk factor for non-communicable diseases. And this has taken a very long time. We've been doing research on air pollution since the mid-1970s, and so for the last 30, 40 years. And we know air pollution is a risk factor, and we know what we need to do. So it's a good step forward for the WHO to now actually say air pollution is a risk factor and we need to do something about it. And what we need to do is easy. We need to stop the burning of fossil fuels. Next slide, please. So that's my last slide, and thank you very much. Terima kasih and selamat pagi.
Thank you very much for Prof. Jalal for your presentation. So we will move to the next speakers. Yeah. So for the next speakers, we have Dr. Sumi Mehta. He will present the presentation with the title The Air Quality, Health and Climate Conversation. So Dr. Sumi serves as Vice President Environmental and Climate Health Vital Strategies, a global public health organization. She has over 18 years of experience in air pollution and health with expertise in epidemiology, exposure assessment, comparative risk assessment, and cost effectiveness analysis. She has extensive field experience in Southeast Asia, and has also worked in Africa, East Asia, and Latin America. Previously, Sumi served as Senior Director of Research and Evaluation at the Global Alliance for Clean Cookstoves, now the Clean Cooking Alliance, the name. Lead Scientist for the Health Effects Institute International Program and Health Policy Analysis in the Evidence and Information for Policy Group at the WHO. So, Ms. Sumi, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction and also for the invitation to participate in this seminar today. So today I'm going to talk to you, maybe change the focus a little bit and really talk now. You've heard a lot about the evidence linking air pollution to health effects. So I'm trying to focus a little bit more on how we can bring a focus on air pollution into public health implementation. Next slide, please. So just to give you a bit of context, I work at an organization called Vital Strategies, and we really are a global health organization, really focusing in on bridging the gap between public health needs and their exposure, with a focus on rapid, large-scale impact. So our work tends to focus in three different areas. We work very closely with governments, and we work on the one hand with data intelligence, trying to strengthen the collection and use of data to inform action. Also strategic communication and advocacy in terms of thinking about how to mount campaigns that use storytelling as well as rigorous research to influence policies. And then also finally, institutional strengthening in terms of strengthening the government's expertise, capacity, also for policy development, legal analyses, and regulatory enforcement. Next slide. Next slide, please. So I think we already heard quite a bit from the others, but just to emphasize that, you know, environmental health is really a leading cause of public health issues. We have around a quarter of all deaths that are linked to environmental causes. Just to mention, we're talking here about air pollution, but we know even other environmental risk factors like children's exposure to lead can also be a major concern. And we have a situation where not only nearly everyone is now living in places that are exceeding the WHO health-based guidelines for air quality, but we're also seeing an increase now in the links between climate change and mortality as well, expecting over 250,000 deaths to happen every year between 2030 and 2050, for example. Next slide. So it's really clear that climate change and when we're thinking about this, climate health is really public health. And when we think about climate health, what we really need is active health sector engagement. And so this is something that we're working on in terms of trying to partner with governments around the world to improve air quality while also building the capacity for frontline health workers to respond to the health impacts caused by poor air quality and also by climate change. Next slide. So another way that you can think about this is really, how do we break down the silos which currently exist among air quality health, and climate. And we know that there are a lot of policy and advocacy levers which have really been underutilized here. So, in 2021, we actually reviewed the different country action plans, or NDCs, submitted by 190 countries to the UNFCCC to really look at the extent to which social vulnerability, health, and air quality had been considered. And in fact, we were surprised and somewhat dismayed to find that there was not a single country action plan that offered a comprehensive focus on these issues. Now, slowly over time, we've certainly seen improvements in the situation. And in fact, those of you that have been following may have been really happy to see that at COP28 this year, for the first time, there was a health day really focused on looking at and bringing in the health sector into the different climate conversations. So, this is really great progress. There's a lot of excitement around this. But I think we still need to ask ourselves as we're doing this, if you look at what the countries are committing to, how specific are these commitments that are being made? And more importantly, beyond the commitments that are made, what can we do to make sure that we can use data to prioritize actions and then also measure progress moving forward? Next slide. So I think we just heard a very nice description of all of the evidence that Dr. Jalaluddin shared with us about how air pollution really affects everyone, starting when babies are in the womb, all the way through the life course. So I won't go into this again. Next slide. But it's also really important to note that as we're thinking about vulnerability, we know that air pollution-related illness and death are not equally distributed. So if you think about this geographically, we can see certainly differences in how different geographic regions are affected in terms of the burden of disease and the number of deaths from air pollution. This is, of course, something which is a function of the level of air pollution, the underlying disease, and also the age distribution of the population. But even if we look at local levels, we see that there are differences in terms of who are the subpopulations who are most vulnerable to air pollution. Next slide, please. So the real challenge as we're thinking about this is, how are we able to identify and then also address inequities in exposure, susceptibility, and resulting health effects at the local level? And I think that it's very important to remember, I'm going to share some examples, but at the same time, it's important to note that these play out very differently across different geographies. So you may want to think about, for example, whether the poor are more exposed. Are there certain neighborhoods that are closer to leading sources of pollution? And also, how do different lifestyles impact exposures? So whether we're thinking about commuting patterns, whether we're thinking about different cooking or heating fuels, different types of occupations, all of these things can also impact the difference in kind of vulnerability to air pollution. Next slide. And so if you look even within a city, this is a nice example that kind of illustrates the situation from New Delhi in India. And you can see that these are two children who are residents of the capital city, and which is, of course, has the dubious distinction of being one of the world's most polluted cities. But only one of them lives in a family that can afford an air purifier. And so if you see here these two children, this is Monu on the left and Amya on the right, you can see the drastic difference in their air pollution concentrations. It's a little bit difficult to see. The slides are not that clear on the screen for some reason. But you can see that in Monu's case, almost 150 micrograms per cubic meter of fine particulate that he's exposed to, as opposed to less than 40 micrograms in the case of Amya. And if you see here on the left-hand side, the different trends in their levels of exposure that they face during the early morning, you can just see what a different pattern these two children living in the same city are really experiencing. And if you look at the next slide, it will kind of give you a better idea why. If you look at the neighborhoods where these children live, can we have the next slide, please? You can see here the difference in Mona's neighborhood, where there is a lot of traffic, kind of, dust, also open burning that's happening, likely a lot of kind of solid fuels being used for household air pollution as well. And then you can see that Amya's neighborhood is a much more pristine, more paved and green space. And of course, we know that she also has an air purifier. So their exposures, even in the same city, you can have very, very different experiences. And so as we're thinking about inequities in exposure and impacts, we also have to think about the different context that people are living with within the city. So what do we do in terms of the how do we really think about engaging the health sector for clean air action? So I wanted to just highlight that we've recently come out with a microsite that really highlights different city level examples of real world solutions for clean air and health. And so I'm going to just talk you through some highlights from Jakarta, but then also would encourage you to go to the website to look at other learnings as well. So next slide. So for Jakarta, there are a lot of wonderful examples for how data is being on health impacts is actually being used to prioritize clean air action. And so this is really the type of data that we've seen descriptions. Dr. Haryanto provided a lot of the epidemiology, the studies of population health, really using that along with the health data to look at health impacts of different actions to be taken. Next slide. So one thing is that we've seen, in the city, much more increased capacity to collect and also use some of the routinely collected data to inform and measure progress. And this is really important because the policymakers would like to know for every dollar invested to reduce emissions, how much public health benefit are we likely to get in return? And so you can see here in this assessment that we see in Jakarta, we would likely see around 7,000 adverse health outcomes in children, mainly, children's respiratory illness, for example, over 10,000 deaths occurring every year. And this has, of course, a great economic cost, exceeding close to $3 billion as well. Next slide. And so when we look at this and we say, okay, this is a big problem, but what do we think about in terms of the effectiveness of the different solutions? Well, in Jakarta, they really looked at the benefits of a number of the different strategies that were under consideration and actually were able to see that enforcing regular vehicle emissions would actually provide the greatest health benefits. Next slide. And so this is something that the city has worked on, they're still focusing a lot on the regulations. And meanwhile, what do we do on the side of awareness? So CHIMSA, which is the Indonesia Center for Medical Students, has been doing a lot of work around the time of World Environment Day when they were doing the mass emissions testing in the city. CHIMSA actually had a lot of active health promotion and education underway about health impacts and also strategies to minimize exposure. And they did this coupled with general health screenings of blood pressure and blood glucose levels to really engage the public further. Next slide. And also, we have also been thinking about different ways to also communicate with the public. Like you saw, much of the information that we've shared on this webinar appropriately is quite technical. But if we want to think about sharing with a less technical audience, we also have to think about having more public-facing information. So here you can see, this is actually a video that was produced in collaboration with BBC Storyworks. That was really focused on the data healing lungs of a city. So hopefully we should be able to play this video for you in just a moment.
Gimana caranya anak-anak kita tuh sehat di sini?
Tapi mau di dalam rumah, mau di mana tetap aja namanya debu kan kita nggak tahu. Dia tetap masuk. Siapa sih deh?
Kalau di era-era saya kan alamnya itu lebih bagus, polusinya berkurang gitu. Kawasan Marunda ini dikelilingi oleh beberapa industri dan 2 pelabuhan. Sesak napas saya terhimpit, udara yang begitu kotor yang saya rasakan bahkan sampai saya di tenggorokan tuh nggak terasa sakit. Setelah pindah ke sini yang pertama adalah masalah pencemaran. Kami sangat khawatir sekali pada anak-anak yang setiap hari dia bernapas dengan menghirup udara yang kotor. Saya terakhir mendata warga D3 yang sakit, itu keluhan banyak yang dialami warga.
Yang sulit itu menghilangkan debu. Gimana caranya anak-anak kita tuh sehat? Dari kita hidup nggak sehat. Karena anak-anak kita semua gampang sakit.
Dengan berkembangnya masalah seperti munculnya polusi udara dan krisis iklim, memiliki kemungkinan adanya penyakit-penyakit baru ataupun perkembangan penyakit dari penyakit-penyakit sebelumnya karena perparahan dari kondisi iklim yang terjadi. Seorang anak-anak ataupun bayi menghirup udara lebih banyak dibandingkan orang dewasa. Mereka akan menghirup zat toksik lebih banyak daripada orang dewasa. Dampak jangka panjangnya adalah terkait penyakit pernafasan kronik.
Yang kami lihat itu ya memang tidak terlihat, tetapi ketika dia terjatuh ke tanah itu sangat terlihat jelas. Pada saat polusi itu masuk terbawa angin, ya paling kami menyarankan bahwa harap jangan di luar gitu, segera di dalam rumah dan gunakan masker. Dan pada saat warga ada yang sakit, ya segera lakukan pengobatan ke puskesmas. Ya hanya itu aja sih yang bisa kami lakukan gitu.
Seorang dokter dan seorang calon dokter juga untuk memahami situasi agar dapat menyikapinya secara lebih bijaksana dan bisa menunjukkan suatu fakta. Mengukur kualitas udara tentunya sangat penting untuk kita memberikan gambaran seberapa bersih, seberapa sehat udara yang kita hirup sehari-hari. Dan sebaiknya fakta tersebut dipublikasikan kepada masyarakat-masyarakat setempat. Karena polusi udara dan krisis iklim, kalau misalnya dibiarkan terus-menerus, hal ini dapat berdampak kepada kesehatan di masyarakat. Mengetahui data itu juga menjadi suatu landasan yang fundamental untuk kita untuk membuat suatu solusi, baik solusi untuk diri kita sendiri, solusi untuk masyarakat, bahkan skala yang lebih besar lagi.
Jika saya ada di taman kota dengan udara yang berbeda, seperti yang saya rasakan begitu enaknya plong di hidung, di tenggorokan, dan di dada. Ini loh harapan kami, yang kami inginkan. Bahwa kami hidup yang setiap hari bernapas menggunakan udara sebagai hak setiap manusia mendapatkan udara yang bersih.
Car Free Day kayak gini kan buat kesehatan juga bagus. Udaranya segar, sehat, dihirupnya juga enak, jauh dari udara yang tidak baik. Kayak gini kan sejuk, itu dunia yang baik menurut saya ya. dia sehat. Happy-nya mereka dunia yang terbaik sih buat saya.
Okay. So this kind of gives you an idea of both the wonderful work that the medical students are doing, focusing on really bringing in the clean air action, but also to give you an idea of how we need to use, from a public health perspective, key data and stories to really increase public awareness as well as demand for clean air action. Next slide. And so I would encourage you, if you want, to go to the microsite where you can also see examples from other cities around the world at very different states of kind of data capacity, different air quality levels, but really hear how they're really bringing air quality as a risk factor into the public health space as well. Next slide. This is something that you can also see in different places, where we're thinking about, again, other frontline health workers becoming clean air advocates. You can see examples here of the Ashas, who are the accredited social health activists in India, who are really also learning about air quality and its impact so that they can communicate with mothers and with their families and their communities about how to reduce their risk, but also how to be effective advocates for clean air. Next slide. And then just a couple of another example of something which is maybe a little data oriented. We've also been doing some work on children's climate and environmental health indicators, because we know that governments need data in order to drive, again, political as well as public will to take action. And many times these data don't need to be actually collected from scratch, but we need to think about how to maximize the integrated use of routinely collected data on air quality, on emissions, on health effects. And this kind of indicators framework can really form the foundation for data collection and surveillance. And so, there are efforts underway right now at the provincial level in China, also launching in Brazil. So this is kind of another exciting example of, kind of using data to make the case for clean air action. So just to summarize here, when we're also thinking on the flip side, how can we think about climate action planning to promote clean air as well as health? I mean, one thing that we've seen, we have a great start now, but I think a lot of kind of distance to be traveled so that we can really elevate the importance of air quality and health benefits as part of climate action. And I think this really also gets at the need to target those climate actions that will really also improve public health as well as health systems in the short term, so that we can focus on short-term benefits to health as well as the longer-term impact on the climate. And this is actually something for air quality that's quite straightforward, because what it really involves is really focusing on reducing the emissions of the most health damaging pollutants. And also, I think having more acknowledgement that climate change's greatest impact is likely to be on the most socially, geographically, and economically vulnerable populations. So as we do this, again, we need to make the most of our existing data at the same time as we are strengthening data systems. And, this approach applies at the national level, but it also applies very much at the local level, at cities, for example. So you can just see here illustratively, all of the different kind of leading sources of pollution, and then the different solutions that you could actually consider. They would have benefits for climate, but also for clean air as well as public health. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sumi. So, in this session, we will have Q&A session. So we have several questions from the participants, and now from for Prof. Budi, are you still with us? Okay. So Prof. Budi, this is a question for you from Nismah Asegaf. How can we resolve the environmental damage caused by the food estate program in Central Kalimantan, affecting Indonesia's climate? What effort are being made to repair the 600 hectares of forest, considering that forests act as the lungs of the ecosystem, producing vital oxygen for living organisms? Restoring this damaged ecosystem poses a significant challenge. That's the question for Prof. Budi. Next question. Do we have? Okay. And for Prof. Jalal, we have a question for you as well from Catherine. So Prof. Jalal, the question from Catherine is, what is the significant impact of climate change and global warming on the health of pregnant women and children's growth and development? That's the question. And then the next question for Dr. Sumi. This is from Vega Kesuma Ernanto. What are the easy steps that everyone is willing to take to reduce pollution in the household and community? Yeah, that's all from the session, Q&A session. So perhaps all the speakers, so perhaps all the speakers can answer to those questions. Maybe we start from Prof. Jalal first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the question. If I understand correctly, the question was the impact of climate change and air pollution on children's health. Was that correct? And it's a big question. We know that from the health studies on air pollution, and we know that air pollution has effects on pregnant women, and there'll be newborn adverse or poor newborn outcomes, low birth weight, prematurity, and we also know that this can then go on to lead to other problems later in life. Climate change, and this is, as Professor Haryanto mentioned in his talk, there's this interrelationship between air pollution and climate. Global warming leads to and the same sources of greenhouse gases that lead to global warming are also the same sources that lead to ambient air pollution. So, for example, the burning of fossil fuel leads to CO2, which then leads to global warming over the longer term, and also produces fine particles, which can have both short-term effects and long-term effects on human health. So they share common sources. And any of the integrated solutions, and I think Dr. Mehta has already mentioned some of the co-benefits we will derive from if we intervene in the climate area. So any kind of work we do to reduce global warming, to reduce CO2 emissions or other greenhouse gases, will also reduce ambient air pollution, outdoor air pollution. And those of us who work mainly in air pollution area, whatever we can do to reduce air pollution will also then reduce the amount of greenhouse gases. So the end result is the same. The product of climate change can act through air pollution, but it may also act through the other in many other ways. So, for example, heat and heat effects, or drought and flooding, which may affect the food supply, and then impact on children's health. And or climate change, global warming will also affect forest fires. So there'll be more frequent and more intensive and longer forest fires. So this will have a direct impact on health and probably a direct impact on children's health. So both climate and air pollution can work in many different ways. Now, I'm not sure whether I've answered the question exactly as you might have asked, but if not, I can take a follow-up question.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Jalal. And then we have also a question for Dr. Sumi. Dr. Sumi, what are, this is from Vega, maybe I reiterate the question again. What are the easy steps that everyone is willing to take to reduce air pollution in the household and community? So Dr. Sumi, the screen is yours.
Thank you. So I think, it's a little bit of a trick question in a way, because you say, what are the easy steps that people are willing to take? Most people would be willing to take steps to reduce pollution in their communities, as long as those solutions are affordable and accessible and sustainable to them. So you can think, for example, of the challenge of open waste burning. People don't necessarily do this because they prefer to do it, but more because they want to think about, what alternatives do they have for making sure that they have waste disposal, right? And so, we need to think about solutions that can be, again, accessible, affordable, and sustainable. And also think about the equity issue, right? So whether you're thinking about, a lot of the things that we can do to mitigate exposures in the short term, the types of things that are recommended often when there are air pollution episodes, if you think about wearing masks, if you think about air filters, if you think about recommendations for either staying at home or changing your transportation options, these are all things that most people would not be able to do in a sustained way. And also that some people would be able to do more easily than others. So certainly an equity concern. And I think that's why if we want to think about really the most scalable solutions, we have to focus on policy solutions, because those are the ones that are going to have the biggest impact in the long term, whether you're thinking about transitioning to lower emission industries, cleaner fuels, cleaner modes of transportation, focus on construction. All of these things have to really be policy related solutions that we focus in on the longer term, rather than really having the responsibility being on individuals and the communities.
If I could add something here also, is that okay?
Yeah. Please,
Yeah,
please, Prof. Jalal.
I think what Dr. Sumi has said is correct. We can't put the focus on the individual, because we are then we need to focus on the reducing air pollution, or and trying to mitigate the climate change, rather than that adaptation side. Adaptation side is important, but it has to be done at a larger regional level, state level, national level, global level. So I think it's a bit unfair to have individuals bear the burden of trying to reduce their exposure. And for a number of reasons. I mean, obviously, there's the equity issue has been mentioned. Poorer people can't afford air purifiers. And the other issue is that some of these measures don't work very well. So we talk about staying indoors, but many of us live in houses that are quite leaky. They're not, which means that a lot of outdoor air comes inside. So that doesn't work very well for lots and lots of people. Wearing mask, if you're wearing a cloth mask or a paper mask, they don't work. Even wearing a surgical mask, they don't work very well. So you got to use those P2 masks or N95 masks, and they got to be changed fairly regularly. So there's a cost issue there. So some of these things we say that people should be doing, staying indoors, using masks and so on, they don't work. And I think it's very unfair to place the burden of reducing exposure on the general public, on the people, whereas we should be putting the emphasis on the sources. Who are the polluters? What are the polluters? Traffic, industry, mining. So they're the groups that we should be focusing on through our sort of state policies, national policies, global policies.
Thank you, Prof. Jalal and Dr. Sumi for the answer. And it looks like both of you now have fans here because there are some questions again for you, Prof. Jalal. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. So, Prof. Jalal, we have another question from Sri Suharti. The question is, how can we link human health impacts from air pollution with impacts on distribution of welfare, both at the individual levels and at the national level? And the second question for you, Prof. Jalal, it is come from Melianti. So Melianti asks, how to address the increased cases of pneumonia during the rainy season in December? What are the multi-sectoral efforts? So it looks like you have fans here, Prof. Jalal. You should be proud of it.
I think that.
Okay, Prof. Jalal, if you want to answer, please.
I'll try. I'll go with the second question first in terms of pneumonia and the rainy season. Look, I don't understand very much about what the conditions might be in Indonesia or in Jakarta in terms of the rainy season and why more children might get pneumonia. But it's something that we also find in northern parts of Australia. In the rainy season, we see more infections and more diarrheal disease and so on. So in terms of how we reduce the incidence of pneumonia, I think we have to look at the environment where the people are living and working, and mainly more where people are living. What is the environment like? We obviously can't do much about the rainy season or the monsoons. They will come and go each year. But let's look at the environment. Who are the children who are getting pneumonia? Where do they live? What is the family situation? What's their income levels? And so we need to look at the social determinants of health, which means their income levels, the family, the occupation, the housing. And so these are all the conditions that can affect health, because there will be parts of area where children don't get as much pneumonia, and there'll be other parts where there'll be children who are getting more pneumonia. There'll be geographical distributions, and we need to understand that. And only once we understand the distribution of the social determinants of health and any other kind of risk factors for pneumonia in children, only then we'll be able to find the solutions for how we can reduce the incidence of pneumonia in children during the wet season.
Okay, Prof. Jalal, thank you.
And
You have
the
something
first
to add?
question?
Oh, the first question, Prof. Jalal.
You might have to repeat the first question.
Yang tadi yang pertanyaan tambahan. Oh, enggak, yang itu. Okay, Prof. Jalal, this is the question from Sri Suharti. How can we link human health impacts from air pollution with impacts on distribution of welfare, both at the individual levels and at the national levels?
Okay, thank you. So I'm assuming that when we talk about welfare, we are talking about the kind of socioeconomic status of the individual or at the national level. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'll assume that that's what we mean. Well, I mean, it kind of depends when we do our health studies. So, for example, if we're doing it at the national health studies at the national level, we can look at the socioeconomic status of different regions. And this might be the employment level, this might be the average income level, or educational level of different provinces, or the regions below the province level. And then we will look at the air pollution levels at the smaller geographic area and the whatever health outcome that we're investigating. And we can then try to see differences. Do poorer areas have greater health effects? Do areas with poorer education levels have greater risk of disease and well-being from air pollution? So that's at the national level. But if you want to look at the individual level, then we have to do large surveys or use survey data that's been done at the national level. And there are national level surveys where we ask about their health status, their well-being, their health behaviors, their smoking, their physical activity, and so on. And we also would generally ask questions about income and the education level and the occupation. And then we'll have data at the individual level around health and well-being and around socioeconomic status. And we can then also, using more complex air pollution modeling, we can attribute air pollution levels to those individuals where they live. And we can then do our analysis and try to determine whether whereas the impact of air pollution is sort of modified or changed by socioeconomic status. So it kind of depends on our study design. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Jalal. I think your answer is comprehensive enough. So for Prof. Budi, have you back with us because you have two questions here. So Prof. Budi, the first one, the question is, how can we resolve the environmental damage caused by the food estate program in Central Kalimantan affecting Indonesia's climate? What efforts are being made to repair the 600 hectares of forest, considering that forests act as the lung of the ecosystem, producing vital oxygen for living organisms? Restoring this damaged ecosystem poses a significant challenge. That's the question number one. And then the second one, oh yeah, you can answer directly, Prof. Budi. Prof. Budi, are you still with us? Oh, yeah. Please unmute, Prof. Budi. We see you still mute in the mute mode here.
Technical problem.
Secara nasional lah kita buat. Halo? Karena di luar negeri. Ya, sorry. Mungkin ini aja Pak. Apa pertanyaan penting Pak? Atau Pak? Hello. What about my voice?
Yes, Prof. Budi, loud and clear, please.
Okay. Sorry, because I have also another webinar and probably in the next 5 minutes I have to present the other webinar. Yeah, I'm very sorry about this. Okay. I heard that the question for me is concerning about the food estate, right?
Yes, the question is how can we resolve environmental damage caused by food estate in Kalimantan?
Well, this very hard question actually, especially for me, because my background is in environmental health and environmental epidemiology. But let me try to answer not in direct way, but let's say with I think that related to my discipline is about the result of the food estate. Yeah, if the food estate can be generated and implemented very well, then of course the availability of food will be very good for people. Yeah, and hopefully it would also support to the effect of the lack of vitamin, lack of nutrition among people, especially children. Yeah. If this project can be successful, yeah. But from the point of view in the beginning of project planning and also what do you call it, after planning, construction, and so on, of course, it will be affected to the environment. Yeah, many effect actually, like climate change and also land use change. Yeah, this is a part of land use change. It will affect it to health impact. Yeah, to the people surrounding the area. For example, when we open the forest, then people will more closer to the habitat of mosquito, Anopheles mosquito.
Terima kasih banyak, Prof. Terima kasih banyak, Prof. Wisnu. Selamat siang, Prof.
In the mosquito habitat. Yeah. So then, based on our study previously, it's also affected the land clearing and land change will affect the increase of malaria cases, something like that. So I think, well, yeah, based on my knowledge and my discipline, I just can able to answer for this question. Thank you, Mas Bibu.
Thank you very much, Dr. Budi. Prof. Budi, do you still have time for us for one question?
Well, yeah, I think one more question. I may able to answer it.
Okay, great, Prof. Budi, because we have one more question here from Muhammad Dawam. What is the most cause of Indonesia air pollution sources, and what the recommendation from the for the central government in your point of view?
Okay. For the main sources, actually, it's quite different. Yeah. For example, in the big city, we found that the main sources is from transportation, yeah, especially for the it actually came from the number of vehicles and also the use of the fuel. The fuel quality is quite low, yeah. Mean the better quality actually that being used right now. As I mentioned previously, that about 85% of us, of the population in Indonesia, still using pertalite, yeah, fuel of the pertalite that the quality is actually is lower than the standard of Euro 2. We use Euro 2 standard as the lowest standard for fuel that may as the standard of the impact to the health of the population. So 85% still under using the fuel quality, lower quality of the fuel. So of course, in the big city, by replacing or by phasing out the bad quality of the fuel will be as the main effort that may support to the cleaner air pollution among the city. But in other places like the cities close to the forest fire and also close to uh, central of industry, then the sources will be contributed more from that forest fire as well as industrial area. So that is actually my answer. Hopefully helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Budi. So, Dr. Sumi, you still there? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Sumi, we have a question for you from Putu Widiantara. So the question is, what factors play a crucial role in addressing the challenge of climate change? Are there policies changes or human behavioral approaches that are deemed inappropriate and require modification?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So I think, if you go back and try to think about those changes that are going to be most appropriate, as we mentioned, it's really the policy changes that will be most effective at scale. So I think, part of this, we need to think about, of course, those policies again that are going to have the differential impact on those who are most vulnerable. So if you're thinking, for example, of having safe and active clean transportation, if you're thinking on this, trying to think about how you're designing urban planning and development to make sure that you are also providing safe and clean transportation for those who really need this the most. So like you can see examples sometimes where they'll say, okay, we're going to put in bicycle lanes, or we're going to put in, bus rapid transit, or other types of transportation, but this is being done in a way that is only benefiting those who already have access to transportation. We need to think about doing this so that the planning more broadly is making sure that everybody at all economic levels are able to get to work, get to school, and go about their daily life. Similarly, I think if we're thinking about clean energy, we need to think about not just providing access to clean energy at the for transportation or for industry, but also to make sure that at the household level, people also have access to clean and affordable industry. So I think for all of these, for all of the leading sources of pollution that we have, when we're thinking about reducing emissions, in all cases, we know kind of what the low-hanging fruit are in terms of what solutions are available, but we just have to make sure that we are prioritizing those that are going to provide the maximum health benefits and those that are also going to reduce inequities in exposure in the short term as well. And so I think that, it's not necessarily what we implement alone, but also how we prioritize and how we implement that is going to make the biggest difference.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Sumi, for the answers. So as we heard the explanation as well as the answers during the discussion session, so allow me to summarize the key points of the discussion, but I will start with the summarize from Dr. Sumi. So Dr. Sumi has a very good point here, very solid, the solid one. Climate health is public health. So if we want to reduce the pollution, if we want to tackle the air pollution issues, then we should consider climate health as a public health issues, because climate change is caused by is also causing the increase of the air pollution, and then the air pollution issues needs a policy solution that requires based on the public health approach. So that's the key points that we have in our discussion, and also the call to action. So more policies, more comprehensive solutions based on the scientific research is imperative for us to tackle the air pollution issues. So maybe that's all for today's discussion. I will hand over the event for the ceremonies. And also, before I left, thank you for all distinguished speakers, very fruitful and also very insightful presentation that you delivered for us. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we near at the end of this enriching webinar, I would like to extend our all gratitude to the participants, speakers, and also the sponsors who have made this event possible. Before we conclude, let's take a moment for our sponsorship video from PT Pundarika Atma Semesta. We appreciate your active participation, and as a token of our gratitude, in addition to the active participant during the Q&A session, we will also give away some door prize for those whose name are selected in the lucky draw. We have randomly selected some names of the participants, and maybe the operator can show. All right, so once again, congratulations to the name on the screen. First to Nizmah Asagaf, Putu Widiantara, Sri Suharti, Fitriani, Putri, Agustri Joko Suseno, I Putu Chandra, Muhammad Ilham Fajar Faisal, Agus Supriyanto, and one more. Damayanti, Sima. All right, so once again, congratulations to all the winners, and the door prize will be sent to the address of the participant. So please contact the committee through the email address informed in the chat regarding the delivery of the gift to your address. Ladies and gentlemen, to officially close this webinar, on behalf of the committee of the webinar, allow me to once again thank for the valuable contribution from our sponsors. Thank you to PT Pundarika Atma Semesta, PT Toyota Motor Manufacturing, thank you to Pertamina Drilling Service Indonesia, Bank Syariah Indonesia, PT Suprako Indonesia, PT Vale Indonesia Tbk, Pertamina International Shipping, Pertamina Transkontinental, PT Kino Indonesia Tbk, PT Rejeki Abadi Sakti, PT Berkat Sentosa Utama, PT Nusantara Tracer, PT Indra Karya Persero Survey and Investigation Division, PT Pasaman Petro Energi, PT Patra Drilling Contractor, PT Trijaya Global Mandiri, PT Kartika Bina Medika Tama Medika Plaza. Ladies and gentlemen, for the ear certificate, we already input the link on the chat box, so please see the chat box to open your e-certificate. Once again, thank you all for being part of Breathing for a Better Tomorrow. We hope this webinar will catalyze positive change in addressing the serious challenge our planet faces. Stay safe and healthy to us all, and let's work together for a healthier and sustainable future. This concludes our webinar. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
And there is a 98% chance that at least one of the next 5 years and the 5-year period as a whole will be the hottest on record. According to recent research from scientists at the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, average temperatures are already 1.1 degrees Celsius higher than 1850 to 1900 levels. The rate of temperature rise in the last half-century is the highest in 2,000 years, said United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. El Niño and La Nina have different effects in some areas. As a result, Indonesia south of the equator was hit by drought. Rotendao and East Sumba, NTT, also broke the record for the longest rainless days, which is 176 days per October. Climatology researcher at the Center for Climate and Atmosphere of the National Research and Innovation Agency Bryn Irma Yuli Haston explained. The temperature condition in Semarang was reported to reach 38 degrees Celsius. This is the effect of climate change. BMKG reports Indonesia's normal monthly average temperature from 1991 to 2020 and Indonesia's monthly average temperature until September 2023. The estimated loss of the health sector due to the impact of climate change throughout 2021 to 2050 is estimated to reach 86% or 21.6 billion United States dollars of national GDP for priority groups of diseases due to the negative impacts of climate change, consisting of 1. Vector-borne diseases malaria and dengue. 2. Waterborne diseases diarrhea. 3. Airborne diseases pneumonia, acute respiratory infections, RE, and tuberculosis TB. And 4. Malnutrition, stunting, wasting, and underweight. As doctoral students of the Faculty of Public Health, we feel called to hold an international seminar. We are proud to present an international seminar with the title, Breathing for a Better Tomorrow, Unveiling the Impact of Air Pollution on Our Climate and Health, and keynote speaker by Deputy Minister and Director General of Disease Prevention and Control, Dr. Maxi Rainrondonu, EHSM, Mars. Welcome to this international webinar.